For the past couple of years, we've been talking about the rise of the next generation of F1 drivers. Well, their generation is now. In 2022, Formula 1 will be in a situation that it's never been in before. George Russell at 23 years old will be racing for Mercedes, Max Verstappen 23 years old at Red Bull, Charles Leclerc also 23 years old at Ferrari, and Lando Norris, who is 21 years old at McLaren. F1 has never had so many star drivers with serious World Championship potential, and each of them at such a young age, all being in teams who in the next year or two all have the financial backing, the right people and the infrastructure to fight for World Championships. But what makes this such an unprecedented event in Formula 1 history, and which of these potentially great drivers will rise above the rest and become the best of their generation? Now, why do I say that F1 has never been in this position before? Well, great drivers, regardless of age, always eventually find themselves in the best teams and in the best cars. But we've never had so many championship caliber drivers in great teams, and especially at such young ages. Going back to 2009, we had Hamilton at the age of 24 and Vettel at the age of 22 in McLaren and Red Bull respectively. In 2003, we had 22-year-old Fernando Alonso at Renault and 23-year-old Kimi Räikkönen at McLaren. Then going back even further to 1994, when Schumacher aged 25 started winning titles for Benetton, and Häkkinen aged 26 had his first full season at McLaren. And then possibly going back all the way to 1985, when we had Senna aged 25 at Lotus, Prost aged 30 at McLaren, Mansell in his first season for Williams aged 32, and Piquet aged 33 at Brabham, with all four of the drivers winning at least one race in that season. But even then, like I mentioned, Prost, Mansell and Piquet were all in their early 30s, and as far as the other examples, each time it was only really two young drivers maximum that both reached top teams and who came into F1 at similar times. That's why 2022 is so unprecedented. This season we've seen Lando mature and finally step up as the team leader, Charles has already been Ferrari's best driver for the past 3 seasons, Max is fighting for a title right now, and George Russell will finally get his shot in more competitive machinery with a potentially championship-capable car in 2022. In Formula 1, we have currently 3 different generations. First off, we have the 4 all-time great drivers from the previous 20 years in Kimi, Fernando, Lewis and Seb. With Kimi announcing his retirement at the end of the season, it signals the beginning of these 4 legends all exiting the sport, with it being very likely that in just 2 years' time, all of them will be gone from Formula 1. In a way, it's always sad to see an era of greats come to an end, and in particular for me because, as I've mentioned before on my channel on numerous occasions, this is where I started watching F1, and it's these drivers that started a lifelong passion for Formula 1 for me in the first place. Next is the in-between generation of Ricciardo, Perez and Bottas. These are the drivers who've been in F1 for around a decade or so, and in a way, were just unlucky to find themselves in F1 slap bang in the middle of the other drivers' prime championship winning years. They are still great drivers in their own right, and that should never be forgotten, having won races and stood on the podium multiple times, but for different reasons they never quite were able to be in the right place and at the right time to win and challenge for championships. And of course, now we have the next generation. Despite knowing that the likes of Seb and Fernando will soon be gone, F1 will still be in an amazing place as we start to see the likes of Lando, George and Charles finally start to fight for world championships with their respective teams, and that's, by the way, not to disrespect the other relatively young drivers like Gasly, Sainz and Ocon, who are also quality drivers and who will also potentially play vital roles and maybe also fight for championships in the next couple of decades. However, now let's take a look at how these 4 drivers stack up going into 2022. Beginning with George Russell, he's obviously the biggest unknown at the moment because although I have no doubts that he will fit into the Mercedes environment like a hand in a glove, given all of his previous experiences with them, having now the pressure of being at a top team and more importantly being teammates with Lewis Hamilton, that's going to be the real test for George Russell. Now, I've already done a full video going into full detail in terms of what I think Russell could potentially do, so I'll have that linked below. But to summarize, I have zero concerns in terms of George's ability and speed on a Saturday and a Sunday. What I think will define whether or not he will be an instant success is how quickly he integrates himself with the management and the development team at Mercedes, and how quickly he can start building the team around him so that the car is to the best of his liking. Now, that might be a little bit tricky given how far already we are into the development cycle of the 2022 cars, but Russell needs to make sure that he doesn't just turn up and trust what Mercedes are doing. He needs to have his voice heard about what he wants from the car from day one. As far as Max at Red Bull, there's not really too much to say. He's the undisputed number one with everything that he needs to win around him. He's the first of the new generation to be in the position to be able to win a world championship. And looking into 2022, the only worry I have is not necessarily with Max, but more so with Red Bull. They have not been shy about saying that they are all in on 2021 and will develop the car for as long as they have to make sure that Max Verstappen becomes world champion. My only worry is what effect this will have on their important 2022 car, and if it will mean that they might start on the back foot for next season during a critical regulation change. The best comparison would be McLaren in 08 and 09, when they fully focused on helping Lewis win his first world title, which they did, but because they developed the car right up until Brazil, which was the title decider, that compromised their 2009 car, which in the first half of 09 could barely challenge for points, let alone anything else, until the team drastically developed it late on in the season, and Red Bull need to make sure that they do not get caught up in the same scenario. As far as Lando and Charles, you can kind of put them in the same group, with the only difference being that whilst Sainz has jumped into the Ferrari and immediately challenged and pushed Leclerc all the way, Ricciardo has struggled with the McLaren car and will be looking to really make sure that he works hard with the development team and that he doesn't have the same issues for 2022. Both McLaren and Ferrari have potential. Despite not being in contention for the championship, make no mistake, they are still top teams with huge budgets and great people working for them, and it's just about realizing that potential and getting back to where they were by taking the best possible advantage of the regulations. Now, as usual, I love to get your opinions on topics like this because ultimately, although this channel is just me talking about F1 as a passionate fan, it's always great to see what my community has to say as well. And so over on my Instagram, which is @aldas001, I sent out a question simply asking which of these drivers between Leclerc, Russell, Verstappen and Norris, in their opinion, will finish their careers with the most success and the most world championships. Now, here were the results. Starting with the lowest, we had Lando Norris, who only got 9% of the vote, then it was Charles Leclerc with 19%, then in second place we had George Russell with 27% of the vote, and then the overwhelming favourite was Max Verstappen with 45%. Now, it also must be said that my good friend JB from the Cars with JB YouTube channel, who I collaborate with in my karting videos, for some reason decided to comment himself. So yeah, let's throw JB's name into the mix as well as the best of the young generation of drivers. But going back to reality for just a second, the results were not entirely surprising because in the end, there's no right or wrong answer because we have no clue where each of these drivers are going to be even 10 years from now. It seems strange because of the strong connection that these drivers have to their current teams, but in modern Formula 1, no driver stays in the same team throughout their entire career. Lando is going to leave McLaren, Max is going to leave Red Bull, and even Charles at some point is going to leave Ferrari. Even if we rewind the clock exactly 10 years ago in terms of the previous Big Four drivers, we had Kimi on 1 championship, Fernando on 2 championships, and then both Lewis and Seb on only 1 championship each as well. Who knew what the next decade would hold, but here we are. The point I'm trying to make is that with these 4 young stars we have now, they still have at least 10 or 12 years in F1 at least from here. any one of them with the right car, the right move to a different team and at the right time could become the next dominant force in F1. Circling back to the here and now, however, we are entering into the next era of drivers. The likes of Alonso and Hamilton, as good as they still are, and they are, by the way, phenomenal drivers even now, they are fighting tooth and nail to still be the best drivers in the twilight of their careers. But eventually, and potentially even this season, the next generation is ready to win titles right now, and that's why 2022 will be a year like never before with so many young, potential future world champions. Formula One is in great hands for the next few decades, as those drivers will start to write their own stories and become legends themselves. Well, that wraps up another video. Let me know all of your thoughts in the comments box below, and if you did enjoy this video, then don't forget to drop a like and smash that subscribe button to support the channel as well. Anyway, I'll see you in the next one.